It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. Alan, how are we feeling on this Feel Good Friday?
I'm upset.
Okay, so you're not feeling so good.
No, I'm upset. I'm upset, and I'm upset for a very specific reason. I'm already on November 1st sick and tired of the disrespect of Thanksgiving. Yep. I've already said Fox Sports. Okay, Fox Sports, the network of John Madden, the network that brought us the turducken, who has a game on every Thanksgiving day, puts out a graphic. Their little robot thing from the pregame, all pumpkined out on October 31st, and then Christmas on November. No, stop it. Stop it. It is Thanksgiving season. It is not Christmas season. It is Thanksgiving. Yep. We only got one holiday that is all about football. You're a football network. What are you doing? Stop it. I'm upset.
Although it does seem like they're trying to infiltrate Christmas from the NBA now as well. But I mean, I associate Thanksgiving directly hand in hand with football. Love the day, obviously. In no rush to get past it.
It was 82 degrees yesterday, for crying out loud.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was crazy. But here we go. I was wondering where you were going with that. I did see your tweet quoting that graphic that you're talking about, though. So that makes sense. Not necessarily the leadoff that I was expecting today, but I appreciate that. I like when I'm also on the edge of my seat and thrown off like the audience is. So Alan, we left off yesterday's conversation talking about some receivers not currently on the Steelers that could potentially come here, which, by the way, I guess we could throw in this little nugget. You weren't sure that it was actually going to matter, kind of based off the information that I had been seeing and how you felt as well. I've kind of been swayed in the same direction, that the Jets result didn't necessarily matter for Mike Williams' availability, but they did get an upset win, or actually they were favored to win. So they got a win over the Houston Texans last night on Thursday Night Football to go to 3-6, and very much feel like, if they could go on a run, if you look at their schedule, it's certainly possible for them to still make the playoffs, and it seems like they're certainly still going to. They're still all in on this thing, so certainly doesn't feel like Mike Williams is going to be part of the Steelers or anybody's plans, and he will continue to be part of the Jets' plans.
Yeah, we talked about that yesterday. I thought that was likely anyway, but yeah, the win probably. I don't think it's one thing if you have a young team to sort of start to punt on the season. It's another thing when you have that team.
Yeah, that's true as well. Yeah, when clearly they've pushed all their chips into this Aaron Rodgers basket and trying to juice whatever they can out of this short window. So anyways, we left off.
And the other thing, just before we move on, the report from Jordan Schultz out there today, like the middle of the AFC, not great this year. Like there are 4 teams with 6 wins or more. That's the Houston Texans, the Steelers, the Chiefs, and the Bills, and there's another 2 with 5 wins. Of those, the Denver Broncos. So not exactly like an uncatchable group there and then the 4-3 LA Chargers are the last playoff team right now. So very approachable bottom of the AFC at the moment.
That's what I say. It's funny because how bad the AFC's been. They got the Denver Broncos feeling like they're Super Bowl contenders or something right now with the way I see that fan base talking. So, it's been pretty crazy, but it'll be interesting to see how many of these teams decide this is the Sunday to determine which direction their team is going to go, if that is the case. But we left off to having that conversation about outside options for the receiving room. And the reason that we've discussed that is obviously because of the state of the current wide receiver room. So we'll pick back up the conversation that we've been having kind of throughout this week in terms of where we expected the group to be, where they actually are right now, and what to expect going forward. So continuing that conversation with the wide receiver group, obviously you got George Pickens, you got Van Jefferson, Calvin Austin, Scotty Miller. Only got 5 snaps out of Roman Wilson before losing him. Ben Skoranek has not been part of it since going on IR. Brandon Johnson's been elevated here and there and gotten a helmet. Was it 3? I think he's at the 3, right? Hasn't he been elevated 3 times? Yes. So, we've seen him get a helmet at times as well. What have we made of this group in terms of where the expectations were to where they are now?
My expectations were pretty darn low, Smitty. I don't know about yours. I honestly feel like it's been like they've kind of overachieved, but like that's not much of a compliment.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I think it's fair to, at least for me, and this isn't their production obviously goes hand in hand with the quarterback play that they're getting as well. But I agree with you. There's a reason that we've had this conversation that we've had pretty much on a weekly basis in terms of the search for a wide receiver. That's not happening for no reason. We feel the same way that clearly the organization does too, or they wouldn't be turning over all these stones that they have. With that being said, the production that we've seen from the room, the performances that we've seen from the room since Russell Wilson took over has maybe shifted that slightly. And what I mean by that, and I've said this over the last couple of weeks, is I feel like Calvin Austin has carved out a role for himself and has looked good even when the production wasn't there on tape. He was open a ton. Like pretty much every single play. If you watch just Calvin Austin, he looks like a guy that belongs and could take over an every down slot role for this team. So at least for me, it's kind of shifted to just get the most talented receiver that you can. You got to bring in anybody that you can for this team. So it's got to be somebody that makes sense in terms of what they're looking for on the outside. So maybe that's where the conversation's changed for me.
And it's interesting that that's happened because Roman Wilson obviously has contributed nothing. And I think, I mean, even I, who was telling people, hey, pump the brakes on Roman Wilson, thought he would have at least by week 8 accomplished something, and he hasn't. And so I think it's a positive sign for Calvin Austin. I think Van Jefferson has played better than I and a lot of people thought he would. And George Pickens has largely been the guy that we thought. I just think, I still think they do need a receiver. I agree, though. I don't feel like it is this. Unless George Pickens gets injured, I don't think they have a catastrophe on their hands at the position like the talent level at the in the offseason seemed to suggest they might.
We've talked about that obviously to some degree, is like what happens if an injury takes place, but it's kind of hard to keep that in your mind at all times, where it's like, yeah, they should go get somebody, not necessarily because they need this guy right now, but you got to have some type of insurance on the roster that just currently isn't there. And, a couple people have brought that up to me recently, like, hey, you guys have done a nice job bringing that aspect into the conversation, because I don't know that everybody else has been talking about that. But, for you then, where are you at in terms of like, if this team is going to add a receiver, like I said, I feel like it should be somebody that plays on the outside to maybe take more snaps away from Van, obviously, but also because of that reason. If you suffer an injury, having the flexibility, if it is like George, knock on wood, that'd be catastrophic, obviously, but at least have some type of insurance as opposed to a guy that's, strictly a slot.
George insurance, the ability to play from behind and go 4 wide receivers, which I don't think they have right now. They're not going to put 4 receivers on the field. I know they only have 4 on the whole roster, and one was Scotty Miller. So I think that's what they don't have that they need. Certainly, if they were able to get like an elite slot receiver, would that be an upgrade? Yeah, but I don't see that happening, and I don't think they just need to add anybody. I think the right kind of addition would be helpful, but I'm with you. I don't think that there needs to be it's not a panic buy situation at this point for the Steelers, I don't think. But it is certainly a need. And if Pickens is injured, it will be a critical need. And so they've got to find a way to address that.
Which is why I think this is one of the more interesting groups to say, what are they going to do the rest of the season? Because we don't know if there's going to be a body that's not here right now that's like going to be on this team the rest of the season. But at least with the group that we have right now, what should expectations be going forward? Especially because now with Russ's insertion into the lineup, we've seen this group take a little bit of a leap.
Well, if there is no outside addition, I really think they need to find a way to get a decent look at Brandon Johnson. And I know he's been up and I know he's played a little bit, but like, he hasn't really gotten the ball. I mean, he's got one catch, one target. Get him in there and get him playing a little bit. If they're not going to make a real addition, see what they got in him, at least. I think it's a young player with some potential. I'm not saying he's the guy, but I mean, he has a chance.
And also familiarity with Russ, scored 3 touchdowns with him last year. So that would be the one thing. And, I do think you got to get Roman Wilson back involved. Obviously, he'll miss 4 games here. Missed 1 already, 3 more on the other side of the bye.
but it doesn't sound like they're shutting him down for the year. It sounds like they still intend to bring him back. So find a way when he comes back to get him involved. At this point, it's still going to be mostly a wasted rookie year, but let's at least get the firsts out of the way. Let's get the kind of rookie, bumps in the road gone, so that when he does play next year, it's old hat and not all new to him. I mean, I think that's the very least they can hope to accomplish with him for the rest of the season.
You talked about players hitting the rookie wall. The rookie wall is just taking Roman Wilson completely out of his rookie year.
The rookie wall has won that battle.
He has. Sticking with the conversation with pass catchers, let's go to the tight ends. Obviously, you got Pat Freiermuth, Darnell Washington, Connor Heyward, MyCole Pruitt, Rodey Williams. Even we got a lot to talk about with this group because there's 5 guys within it that have all played games at the NFL level for them. So what have we made of this group? Because to me, I thought that this was one of the strengths on the roster, top to bottom. They had really good depth here. I think that shows with them dressing 5 guys with regularity. But where were you at in terms of where you thought they were preseason to where you're at now?
If the Steelers are going to continue to dress 5 tight ends, they need to work a 5 guys sponsorship in there.
Hey, yeah, there we go.
5 guys, burgers and fries. And Darnell Washington can put away some burgers and fries. Alfredo Roberts kind of let it slip this week. He's playing at over 300. Darnell, I will say for the record, Darnell disputes that he may be full of it, but he is at least publicly disputing that he is over 300. We were in the locker room a couple weeks ago, and he asked me what I thought he weighed, and I said, I don't know, maybe 285, and that elicited some chuckles from some of the other tight ends. So they thought I was comically low. He's a big boy. I think they're doing a lot better job of utilizing him in the pass catching game this year. The play action has been a big part of it for him, and it's really fun to watch when they get him out there against some defensive backs, because those guys, they don't even know how to approach trying to tackle him. I still think we need to see more from Pat Freiermuth. He's been out there. He's been open. For whatever reason, the quarterbacks haven't been able to find him regularly, and then didn't actually use him a lot last week. Not sure what was up with that. But, I think those are going to be the guys that are doing the bulk of the work, and see Connor Heyward out there as a fullback and Pruitt out there as a second, blocking tight end. But Rodey Williams playing a lot of special teams. I think they have a really nice group. I just think that there's still more for them to accomplish, especially considering there aren't elite slot receivers on this team. So those underneath targets should be all tight ends. Yeah,
absolutely. I like the 5 guys thing because you need to be making an NFL paycheck basically to be able to afford it with any regularity. But I do think that this is, like I said, I really like this group coming into the year. Darnell, to me, is the one that I feel like has had more moments than I expected, especially like between the 20s and the involvement that he's had since Russ took over. I mean, career high 4 catches in the first game that Russ played. Obviously had a big play last week, an explosive. So to me, I think that that's the one area. Again, though, I'm still waiting for like the red zone involvement in terms of his utilization. And then from Pat, yeah, absolutely. And then from Pat, though, like even between the 20s, like not talking just red zone here, I had thought we would see him line up more in different ways than we've seen, and also obviously the production that would come with that, because you're just, I mean, maybe the production of Calvin Austin has kind of taken the chunk out of that, what we expected Pat to do. But like you said, I don't think it's a matter of him not being open and the opportunities not being created by him. For whatever reason, it hasn't been there in terms of the production. Connor Heyward has a touchdown catch this year against Dallas. Pruitt mainly just a blocker. Hot rod here for special teams. Again, I gave him that cap tip for that block that he had last week. But yeah, I like what the group's done up to this point. In terms of going forward, what's your expectation? Like, would them adding or not adding a receiver change your mind about how you feel about Pat the rest of the season, or where we at with this group?
No, I still think they need to be using Pat more in the receiving game. And I mean, I think my expectations are there's more to give for this group. And so, I mean, I think they're going to, if they want to use more 3 receiver, I think, they probably don't need to play 5 guys. I think that's like, I don't think it takes away from Pat. I think it takes away from Pruitt and Heyward. Those guys probably don't need to play as much then, which is okay.
Yeah. Do you feel like, okay, say they add a receiver, do you think that one of those guys is in doubt of getting a helmet on Sunday, or do you think they like them enough just
Yeah.
because of what Hot Rod does on special
No,
teams?
I mean, 5 tight ends is awkward. They're making it work, but it's not ideal.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, the reason that I asked is because we've talked about the strength of that special teams group. Like, I mean,
It's been
obviously,
really
I'm
good.
not. Yeah, I'm not watching like every special teams group around the league, but you'd have a hard time telling me that been a better one so far this season. So, are you going to take a body away from that in what Hot Rod's done, or what have Pruitt's snaps been like? Have we seen a decrease there? Because the first 2 games that he played, he was up like in the 40-ish%. Has that still been the case since coming back?
Yeah, it hasn't changed a whole lot.
Okay. So, who do you would it be Hot Rod then? You still think that would lose the helmet?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. So getting away from that conversation, but sticking on the offensive side of the ball, the running backs. Obviously Najee Harris, we've talked about what he's done over the last 3 weeks. Jaylen Warren starting to look more and more healthy. We haven't had Cordarrelle Patterson for a couple weeks. Hopefully getting him back post bye. Then you've seen, the mix of some running backs getting helmets because of that, whether it's Jonathan Ward, Aaron Shampklin, et cetera. But really that main group is where we want to talk about. What have you made of their performance compared to preseason expectation?
Yeah, a little hard to judge. Jaylen Warren been banged up a bunch,
Yeah.
had the preseason hammy and then the knee, or was it the other way around? No, hammy then knee.
It was hammy then knee.
Yeah. The opposite of Roman Wilson was ankle and then hammy. Yeah, a lot of injuries for this team early in the year. I think hard to evaluate him, but a little bit disappointing. I think. I think I expected more. Najee Harris has been phenomenal. Probably the best we've ever seen him on a consistent basis. And Cordarrelle Patterson, man, before he was hurt, looked really good. He was hurt all training camp and didn't see much of him. Wasn't really sure like what the Steelers had there. And man, he came out and started playing the early part of the regular season. Looked like maybe he was the best of the 3. And so I'm interested to see. He'll be back on the other side of the bye here. Interested to see how they can add to the mix with him in there. But I mean, overall, not a lot of complaints about the way the Steelers are running the ball.
I had people asking me, and I never felt this way, obviously, but the fact it was even a question that was on anybody's mind is the crazy part about it. Was I had people asking me if they thought Cordarrelle Patterson was a roster lock because of him not being able to participate throughout the preseason and stuff, and not knowing
I wondered too.
Yeah. So, to see what he looked like as a runner, obviously pre-injury, was very nice to see. And again, I don't think that enough people gave him or really understood the running style that he had because of his career. Obviously, one of the most illustrious kick returners of all time, but like the dude runs with power, like he seeks out contact. And I don't think enough people really recognize that aspect of his game. Yeah. Jaylen Warren's a tough one just because I feel like the last couple of weeks we've kind of seen him look a little bit more physically like we expected to see him look. And it's hard to hold injuries against the player, but like when you're evaluating the performance up to this point, the dude hasn't found the end zone. He hasn't been nearly as involved because of the injuries that he's had. He's obviously missed time. So I feel like you have to lean on the side of disappointment there with whether for whatever reason, whether it's just disappointment with the injury, disappointment with the performance, for whatever reason, you got to be somewhat disappointed with what you've gotten from Jaylen Warren here in 2024. But on the opposite end of that, Najee Harris to me has exceeded expectations because I thought it was a really weird fit for the offense personally. Like I like the player. I thought that they would find a way to make it work to a degree, but I'm surprised at the level of success that they've had marrying the running style of the player with the running scheme. So it's obviously been very nice to see in the last 3 weeks. Like you said, I don't think that we've seen a better version of Najee since coming to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I don't. And the Steelers are obviously leaning on him a ton. Second in the NFL in rushing attempts per game. Now, some of that's Justin Fields' involvement too, but yeah, I mean, I think it's they're asking a lot out of him. I think Jaylen Warren's done a nice job in pass protection. That's the one area I think he's been still really good. And I think they're keeping Najee fresh too. It's not like, he's been really good, but he doesn't have these big like 30, 40 carry games. Like it's been pretty reasonable workload for him as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about the big boys in the middle of the defense a couple episodes ago.
We had a question about Najee.
Oh, wait.
And now I'm not going to find it. But it was about whether we've changed our minds at all about him not being back next year. And I feel like that's a good time to bring that up.
I feel like this has been it's like quarter points of the season, right? Like it was like 4 games in, 8 games in. We're just going to do this 12 games in and at the end of the year. I mean, my mind is going to be the exact same way. Like should have picked up the 5th year option in my mind. And I think that is what he is proving to be more foolish by the day with these performances that he's having week in and week out. For $6.8 million, they should have brought him back in 2025. And I don't think that the health and then performance of Jaylen Warren has necessarily helped to ease the minds of post Najee Harris here for Steelers fans as well. But I also am not going to go back on my mindset of feeling like it is the wrong call to not invest in this position going forward with a guy that has all the mileage that he does throughout college and the way that the Steelers have run him. And I just don't like the idea in general of paying running backs top dollar. So I'm not changing my mind on that. They should have picked up the 5th year option, but I would not have been wanting to extend him out beyond that.
Yeah, if anything, I think him playing really well makes it less likely that he's back, because I thought the path for him to coming back was Najee has just another okay season where he kind of like scrapes to 1,000 yards, goes out there onto the market and expects there to be people lined up for him. And all of a sudden, the number that he's getting is not what he thinks he's worth. And then maybe a return to Pittsburgh starts to look attractive, maybe in the same way that Juju Smith-Schuster went out into free agency and ended up coming back to Pittsburgh. I thought that was among the most likely ways that he could come back. And now with him playing as well as he has, that one's a little harder for me to see happen. So yeah, I mean, I think I'm even less likely that he will return now than I was before the start of the season.
I want to add a question to this for you though.
All right.
Under the previous regime, Kevin Colbert, do you think it would have been more likely for Najee Harris to have been extended?
I think they would have picked up the option for sure.
Okay.
I don't know about an extension, but I think they certainly would have picked up the option. Yeah.
Yeah. I see. I'm definite on the option part. I guess I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm curious as to if you felt like they would have extended him already as well, because obviously
with the option, they wouldn't have needed to extend him. So probably they would have picked up the option and then would be talking about an extension next offseason.
Yeah. No, for sure. But I guess it was just like trying to figure out the value that they had of Najee Harris as opposed to Omar Khan, because they clearly felt like when they drafted him in the first round that he was a guy that on his own could fix the running game, even despite not they put the horse before the carriage. They didn't have the offensive line in place and took a running back. So it's interesting thought that occurred to me, and I want to know people's thoughts on that in the comments. Anyways, last episode or 2 episodes ago maybe, we talked about the big boys in the trenches, the interior defensive line, but we didn't talk about the edge rushers on that episode. A lot of star power out there: TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig. Obviously, you got some contributions from Jeremiah Moon. DeMarvin Leal had the play out there. Adio Dendeji. They've had a lot of bodies because of injuries to Alex Highsmith, to Jeremiah Moon, to Nick Herbig, to Marvin Leal. But what have we made of this group?
This is going to sound insane.
Yeah.
I think they can be a lot better.
I don't think it's insane.
I mean, TJ Watt has 6.5 sacks, 10 tackles for loss, 4 forced fumbles. And I think he can be even better. Yeah. Like, I don't think I feel like this has been a defense that has very much been like playing on cruise control, like where they were dominating teams and they've not really shown a whole lot in terms of new wrinkles to the defense, in terms of like, do you remember last year, that Cleveland game where they came out with like an entirely different defense to fool the Browns, and like Minkah was playing outside corner, and like there was just like stuff that nobody had ever seen before, and the defense just single-handedly won the game because everyone knew the offense had nothing.
Yeah.
We haven't even seen them go to, like, they've been playing like your kid brother playing Madden who only knows how to pick one, like doesn't know how to go back to the screen to pick another defense. He's only got the 3 up there. Like, that's how TA has been calling this defense, and they're second in the league in points. Wait till they start to get creative. Wait till somebody forces them into a situation where they got to do something different. I think they can be even better. And then Herbig and Highsmith been hurt most of the year, haven't even really scratched the surface of their contributions.
I feel like the second half where you saw TJ and Alex just wreck shop again in that Monday Night Football game against the Giants is a lot more of like what we could see. Like that was a small, brief moment where it was kind of like this could be going on this entire season. They obviously like didn't have Alex for that period of time. Nick Herbig's awesome. He stepped in and played great, but then he gets hurt as well. And they haven't had all three, let alone even those two, for a long period of time this year. And as far as like the showing the coverages thing, what you just said it there. Like, do you feel like it's just because teams haven't forced them into doing so? Is it because they haven't gotten into the division part of their schedule as well? Does that play into it? Or is it literally just like they feel like they haven't had to yet?
Yeah, I think part of it is they feel like they haven't had to yet. And I do think the division part of it probably plays into it a little bit, where like it's a little bit easier to, the more familiar you are with an opponent, the easier it is to get like creative and specific about how you want to attack them. They played a lot of teams so far they don't see very often. Don't see the Giants very often. Don't see the Cowboys very often. Don't see the Falcons very often. Don't see the Chargers very often. And so like really not a lot of familiarity with the opposition. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that's, I think there's a lot more there. And it's not like this coaching staff is afraid to be creative. Like they're not at all. They have not been. They just haven't been so far this year.
So I feel like we probably, if people are watching or listening to this, they could tell which direction you're going to go here in terms of what you think could happen from this point on to the rest of the season. Because you said you feel like this group has a lot more left to give. Do you feel like that's going to be the case, or do you feel like because of who's on the schedule or whatever, you feel like they are about where they're going to be, or what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think they're going to continue to be better, and I think they're also going to face some passing offenses that are going to give them some more opportunities. I mean, be honest, like some of these teams don't throw very much. Like the Bengals are going to throw 50 times, and so I think there's going to be more opportunities for these guys to impact the game as well.
Yeah, that's definitely a very good point with the way that they spread out teams in Cincinnati. So that'll be interesting to see. But I agree, and it's more so to me about just obviously like when they get Nick Herbig back and are able to do stuff with all three of those guys. And even like being able to give TJ more breathers if necessary, and hopefully improving the quality when you lower the quantity. Okay, let's talk about the defensive backs. Obviously, I feel like there's been a significant upgrade made in that room over the last from last season to this season. Obviously, you had Joey Porter Jr. there, you had Minkah Fizpatrick there, but getting Donte Jackson and getting DeShon Elliott, who's been awesome, and you got Beanie Bishop obviously in the slot, DeMonte KZ off the bench as well, also playing special teams. They bring back Terrell Edmonds. Miles Kilburn doesn't really play defense, but I guess if you want to list him as a safety. What have you made of the defensive back group?
Multiple significant additions in Donte Jackson and DeShon Elliott. I think they're so good. Both of those players have been outstanding. I think you've seen nice, solid growth from Joey Porter Jr. It's not like he took a huge step farther forward than what we saw last year, but I think he's cleaned up a lot. You haven't seen the penalties like you saw last year. That was such a thing. I think his tackling has continued to improve. Really pleased with his growth. And I don't think we've seen like the secondary is playing really well, and I don't think we've seen great football from its best player in Minkah Fizpatrick yet. And so I think there's a lot to give there. I do think this is a group that's been playing a lot of zone, probably to protect those newer guys. That you're not going to be able to play zone against everybody. The Chiefs will eat you alive if you try to drop in the zone against them all night long. The Bengals can too. So there's going to be more man-to-man in their future, and there may be some struggles there. But I also think that's where Minkah thrives as well. So, I think there's going to be some give and take, and we've seen a lot of big plays. So we haven't seen a lot of splash from Minkah Fizpatrick, but we've seen a lot from Donte Jackson, which we probably didn't expect, considering the guy had like 4 interceptions in his last 3 seasons and now has 3 so far this year already. So they're still getting them. They're just not coming from the places we expected them to necessarily, and I think they will, given some more time.
Yeah, Minkah's the only one out of that group that doesn't have a pick. Joey has 1, Beanie's got 3, DeShon's got 1. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. but also, like, okay, so looking forward, they're getting Cam Sutton back in the mix as well. So you would think not only is there an addition there, but you got a young player in Beanie Bishop who is ascending already when you see what he's done the past 2 weeks as opposed to the previous ones. Joey Porter Jr. in year 2, obviously, he's still getting better. I would be hard pressed to say the year is not pointing up for this group as well, right? I mean, you got to think that this is only a group that's going to continue to get better, especially all that considered. Also, along with the fact that, like we said, 2 new guys. Not saying they're not acclimated already, but even more reps, even more time together.
Yeah, I think Cam Sutton will provide them a lot of different answers for multi-receiver personnel packages, teams that don't with big slots they haven't really had a good answer for. Now they do. And a better backup on the outside. With Corey Trice out, it's been pretty dicey. James Pierre played a bunch. I think Cam can go out there and play. I mean, he was the Lions' #1 corner last year. He can play outside, no problem. And so I think, in fact, if you want to play, if they get into a game where they want to play more man, he could play over Donte Jackson. It wouldn't totally surprise me. So I think it just gives them options. It gives them a much more viable, traditional dime package than they've had. And so, yeah, man, I think, and Beanie, what a find that was. I mean, I think we all sort of knew, but what an awesome player for an undrafted free agent.
Yeah, it really doesn't make sense still to this day, especially in this type of draft class. And I feel like we're going to continue to see more and more of these, right? Where underclassmen are staying because of NIL and stuff. But this past draft, man, how many guys were even day 3 got to me for a player to go undrafted of this caliber is just insane to me when you look at some of the talent or lack thereof that was there on day 3. So, the Steelers got them one, in my opinion, Beanie Bishop. Whether or not Cam Sutton is going to take word from him, I don't think necessarily speaks to what Beanie Bishop is as a player. And I'm excited about to continue to see that growth from him, and not only him, but the entire unit. Anything else to add, Alan?
I don't think so.
Man, we had to knock out a lot of positions today to get back on track after only getting to the offensive line yesterday, but here we are. Good stuff for a Friday. Reminder from Alan Saunders not to rush past Thanksgiving to Christmas. Other than that, Alan, tell the people they can find you.
Do we want to push off then our predictions? Do we want to save that for Monday? We teased it for today, but listen, we can welsh on that tease. I have no problem. The audience will forgive us. I have faith.
I say let's wait.
All right. Monday it is. Monday it is. That means that you all have one more day to give us your updated predictions in the comments.
That's why.
Then we will read some of them along with giving ours on Monday. And there you go. So until then, like, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications here on the YouTube channel. Follow me on @Saunders_PGH on X, Instagram, and TikTok. SteelersNow.com as where all the words so I can get paid. And PGH Steelers Now is the site's account, and you can find it.
There we go. Hit us in the comments with those predictions. You got all weekend to do so. We'll be back Monday to give you ours. So do what Alan said. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell if you were here on YouTube. If you're not, if you're on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from, just search Steelers Afternoon Drive. Leave us a 5-star review and subscribe over there. Also find us on TikTok. Our TikTok's actually been doing some numbers recently. Probably because of the consistency that I've started to actually post with doing that over there. So Steelers Afternoon Drive on TikTok as well. And then find me everywhere. Zachary Smith, PGH, for Alan Saunders, and myself. Thanks for jumping in and taking another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.